Well, good morning. My name is Rocky Moretti. I'm the Director of Policy and Research with TRIP, a transportation nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. TRIP is supported by a coalition of manufacturing, insurance, construction, labor, and engineering organizations, and they look to us to put out reports looking at the latest information on the condition, the use, the safety of the nation's transportation system. This new report, New York Transportation by the Numbers, reviews the latest data looking at the condition of roads and bridges in New York, also levels of traffic congestion, and also looking at levels of traffic safety across the state. Today, I'll initially give my comments that cover the report. Then we're going to hear from four speakers from within the state who can then provide their reaction to the findings of the report. First, we'll hear from Jeff Smith. Jeff is the president of the New York State County Highway Superintendents Association. Second, we'll hear from Elizabeth Carey, the director of public relations and corporate communications with AAA Western and Central New York. Then we'll hear from Thomas O'Connor, the Vice President of Government Relations for the Capital Region Chamber and the Center of Economic Growth. Then we'll also hear from Ashley Ranslow, the New York State Director of the National Federation of Independent Businesses. Let's turn to the key findings of the report. TRIP estimates that the annual cost to New York motorists of lost time due to traffic congestion, the additional cost of operating vehicles on rough roads, and the economic cost of serious and fatal traffic crashes in which the lack of adequate roadway safety features were a contributing factor is $38 billion annually. The TRIP report also breaks this down for all of the urban areas, large urban areas across the state. In the interest of time, I'm going to give the data for the state's largest urban areas, and then when the initial press conference is over, I'll be happy, upon request, when we get to the question and answer period, to provide that data for individual areas. And I forgot to mention that at the end of the initial comments, that any media that have questions can either use the raised hand or question function. And then my colleague, Carolyn Kelly, will elevate you to panel status so that you can ask your questions. TRIP estimates that the average cost of motorists in the New York metro area of roads that are deteriorated, congested, and sometimes lacking desirable safety features is $3,492 annually. The TRIP report estimates that the average cost of motorists in the Capital District area of roads that are deteriorated, congested, and sometimes lacking adequate roadway safety features is $1,863 annually. The TRIP report estimates that the average cost of motorists in the Buffalo-Niagara region of roads that are deteriorated, congested, and sometimes lacking an adequate roadway safety features is $1,982 annually. The TRIP report estimates that the average cost to motorists in the Rochester area of roads that are deteriorated, congested, and sometimes lacking adequate roadway safety features is $1,828 annually. The report also took a look at the condition of bridges across the state. And here, again, when we break these down regionally, the TRIP report finds that in the Capital District area, 16%, excuse me, let me just start again. The report finds that in the New York metro area, 30% of major locally and state maintained roadways are rated in poor condition, and another 16% are rated in mediocre condition. The TRIP report finds that in the Capital District area, 16% of major locally and state maintained roadways are in poor condition, and another 23% are rated in mediocre condition. The TRIP report finds that in the Buffalo-Niagara region, 13% of major locally and state maintained roadways are rated in poor condition, and another 22% are rated in mediocre condition. The TRIP report finds that in the Rochester area, 12% of major locally and state-maintained roadways are in poor condition, and another 21% are rated in mediocre condition. The TRIP report also took a look at the condition of bridges across the state. Certainly, bridges are inspected regularly, most of them once every 2 years, and then the ratings allow state and local transportation agencies to make decisions in terms of ongoing maintenance to those bridges. And we know that as bridges deteriorate and as they age, those costs of improvements increase. And certainly if you can get to bridges before they fall into poor condition, then it's far more cost effective to make those improvements. Also, if bridges are in poor condition, engineers, if they determine those bridges can no longer carry full traffic weights, you'll see these bridges restricted to lighter weight vehicles, which certainly have economic consequences. Let's look at some of the regional bridge data from across the state. In the New York metro area, TRIP report found that 6% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of immediate repairs, and 68% are rated in fair condition. Our report found that in the Capital District area, 9% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of immediate repair, and 57% are rated in fair condition. In the Buffalo-Niagara region, the TRIP report found that 8% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of immediate repair, and 53% are rated in fair condition. In the Rochester area, the TRIP report found that 10% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of immediate repair, and 50% are rated in fair condition. The report also looked at vehicle travel in New York State. We saw, as you would anticipate, a significant drop in vehicle travel during COVID, and even in the period beyond that, as people really saw their commuting patterns changed by the impacts of COVID and really the increase in terms of remote work. We saw a significant drop, but by 2024, vehicle travel in New York State had returned to within 7% of pre-COVID levels. And the New York Department of Transportation anticipates by 2040 that vehicle travel in New York will increase by 23%. We also took a look at traffic congestion levels in 2024 based on the latest data in terms of vehicle travel, and to take a look at for commuters who are regularly using the roadways in that area, how it impacts them. The report found that in the New York metro area, that we estimate that the average motorist is spending an additional 92 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting 36 gallons of fuel due to traffic congestion. The report found that in the Capital District area, the average commuter is spending an additional 47 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting an additional 23 gallons of fuel. The report found that in the Buffalo region, that due to traffic congestion, the average motorist is spending an additional 44 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting an additional 20 gallons of fuel. The report found in the Rochester area that the average motorist is spending an additional 39 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting 17 gallons of fuel. The report also looked at traffic safety in New York and found that over the last 5 years, there have been 5,375 traffic fatalities, an average of 1,075 per year. And approximately 30% of those traffic fatalities were of pedestrian and bicyclists. Across the country, transportation agencies, starting with the U.S. Department of Transportation, have adopted a safe systems approach, which is a holistic approach to improving traffic safety, ultimately getting traffic fatalities down to zero, which is really the number that it should be. Obviously, across the country, with approximately 40,000 people annually being killed in traffic crashes, it is a safety crisis across the country. The safe system approach looks at a variety of safety improvements, including motorists driving at safer speeds, driving in safer vehicles, not being impaired, certainly, and very critically, improving roadway safety, which is a critical factor in protecting motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. These improvements have been found across the country to have a significant benefit in terms of keeping people safer. The report also notes that with $1.3 trillion of goods shipped annually in and out of New York State, and with these numbers expected to nearly double when adjusted for inflation over the next 25 years, it's critical that the state's freight transportation system continue to be maintained and in some cases expanded where necessary. In 2021, the federal government approved the bipartisan infrastructure bill that has been critical in increasing funding to New York State. But in reality, from 2022 to 2023, capital improvements by the New York Department of Transportation for road and highway pavements actually dropped by 29% and by bridges by 20%. Certainly, one of the challenges faced by the New York Department of Transportation has been a significant increase in the rate of inflation for highway construction. It has increased by 46% since the beginning of 2022. So with that, I'm going to conclude my initial comments. And first, we're going to hear from Jeff.
Thanks, Rocky. I'm Jeff Smith. I'm the New York State County Highway Superintendents Association president presently. I really want to say how much I appreciate being invited today to talk about this extremely important subject. Mostly I want to reinforce how much that we need the transportation capital plan to include the significant increases in transportation funding we are calling for to respond to this growing problem. The hope is that our message here today will resonate with the governor and our legislative leaders, and that they will prioritize addressing the deterioration of this aging and ailing transportation infrastructure to help lift the state's economy and provide for the safety of all those who travel in our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Carey from AAA Western and Central New York. There are 5 AAA clubs in New York State, and I'm pleased to be here to represent all of them today as we talk about some very important topics related to transportation. So AAA has been around and been an advocate for traffic safety for well over 120 years. So this is something AAA has been advocating for at the local and national level for many, many decades. And AAA sees this as a very important priority. All road users deserve safe roads and safe bridges. So the TRIP report came out today showing that, we see the cost that is put onto consumers when they have automotive issues based on poor roads. We also see that investments in infrastructure can improve New York's economy and support New York's economy, which is so important when it comes to tourism and more. We also learned today that vehicle traffic is not going to slow down anytime soon. It's set to, the projections show, set to increase in coming years. So we need to definitely prioritize safe roads and safe bridges for all. So why is this report so important? It's not just about criticizing roads and bridges. It's about raising awareness of how important these topics are and why they're so critical to all road users that are out there. So AAA thanks lawmakers for prioritizing transportation systems and transportation projects. And we urge lawmakers to continue to do so well into the future to provide safe and efficient mobility for all users across the state and beyond. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Rocky.
Thank you. Thomas?
Thanks, Rocky. Tom O'Connor with the Capital Region Chamber. While there are many important aspects of the report related to traffic safety, and obviously that is a huge concern, I want to focus on the economic development impact of transportation and what poor conditions of our roads and bridges have on economic development. So, and I really want to get at what's the return on investment for transportation dollars? What do you get in return for that investment? Well, number one, if you're looking at affordability, to have our driving public spend out of pocket $1,800 a year. You want to make New York more affordable. That's one way you could do it. You want to make New York State more competitive and attractive. If you can address supply chain issues, that helps a lot. And then you're looking, when you're talking about attracting new businesses, it really gets to those first impressions of a region. So in the capital region, you fly into Albany Airport, you can see the investment. You take the train into our Amtrak station, you can see the investment. Now, for the local media, if you're getting off of 7087 onto, say, Water Street, which is basically the first exit into the Capitol, and you're going towards DEC, every single year you hit potholes. So if I'm a CEO or a site selector coming into this region, I'm going to have lots of questions. If you're not even fixing your transportation, your surface transportation, what else aren't you doing? And it really does have that first impression. And that really sets a tone in our ability to attract new businesses. So the return on investment, there's many aspects. And I think our state leaders really have to understand, you really do get a bang for your buck when you invest in our roads and bridges. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Rocky.
Thank you, Tom. Ashley?
Thanks, Rocky. I don't have much more to add in addition to what's already been said here today, but I'll just reiterate some of Tom's points. Infrastructure spending, making sure that we have dependable infrastructure is very important to make sure that the state's economy continues to move. It's important to make sure that goods and services are getting where they need to go in a timely and efficient manner. So transportation infrastructure is incredibly important to just make sure that New York's economy moves in the right direction.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Carolyn Kelly, and she can explain how we're going to proceed with the questions.
Thanks, Rocky. As Rocky noted, my name is Carolyn Kelly. I'm the Director of Communications for TRIP. At this point, we'll be able to have a brief Q&A with Rocky and our panelists. So if there are any questions that you would like to ask about the report, you can use either the chat function below or the raised hand button. I'll then be able to promote you to a panelist, so we'll be able to see and hear you ask your questions live, and we'll also have an opportunity to ask any follow-up questions. While we wait for some of those questions to come in, I'll also just note that the full report is now up on the TRIP website. You can find that at tripnet, tripnet.org. We'll have the full report there, as well as customized news releases for each of the urban areas. And we'll also have a recording of this news conference up there by around 11 o'clock that you're free to use in your broadcast and for your use. So I do see a question from Noah Finkelstein. So Noah, I will promote you to a panelist. And then once that comes up, you'll be able to unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question live of our panel.
I'm actually Sophia Hall. That's my son, Noah Finkelstein. So hello, my technical. But anyway, I'm from 1010 Winds. I know that you mentioned there might be some specific areas. I'm the Long Island correspondent. Is there anything specific about Long Island that, Rocky, you could tell me?
The data itself doesn't break out specific beyond the urban area, although we did a specific report in Long Island just a couple of years ago that you may also want to look up subsequently on our website. But certainly what came across when we did our specific Long Island report was obviously the critical importance of the region in terms of its ability, not only commuting within the region, but access to the New York metro area. And so certainly one of the challenges is, as we see traffic congestion again increasing, there was also a report that came out yesterday that showed that the return to office really happened significantly in 2024. And so really, it's likely that we're going to see traffic congestion challenges increase. And so certainly investments in making the system more reliable are going to be very critical in the Long Island area.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rocky. I see you also have a question from Peter Gill with Newsday. Peter, I've promoted you to a panelist, so once that goes through, you should be able to unmute your line and then ask your question. There we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm wondering about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and I know that kicked in 2 years ago, and I'm wondering, like, how does that play into the conditions we're seeing? And has spending increased? And if so, why do we still have the problems that you've detailed?
Certainly. And the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is really at the very end of 2021, so realistically really kicked in 2022, was a significant benefit for both highway and transit investment in New York State. It increased those funds by approximately 50%. Unfortunately, since it was passed, we've also seen an increased rate of inflation in highway construction costs, which is labor and materials, essentially, of 46%. And so the reality, unfortunately, is the buying power did not increase significantly. Even more worrisome, from 2022 to 2023, we saw a significant reduction in the level of investment by New York Department of Transportation, both in roads and highways and also in bridges.
Sorry, so you're saying less state funding at the same time as this federal funding is coming in?
The data for 2023, and it's in the report, and if you follow it through to the notes at the end, you'll see a link to the source for that. In 2023, the actual capital investment in both pavements and bridges decreased. We don't have the 2024 numbers. And certainly what this report points out is that as vehicle travel continues to increase, and even more critically, as we anticipate a significant increase in large trucks traveling in New York State, it's going to be putting increasing stress on the system. And certainly from an economic perspective, more travel by the public, more freight movement is a reflection of economic growth. So those are all very much positives. But I think as Tom pointed out, if the regions don't have adequate funding, either from the State Department of Transportation or from local governments to maintain this aging system, then that has repercussions. To the public, obviously, it means you're driving on roads in worse condition, and that's costing you money because your vehicles are deteriorating. From an economic perspective, New York State is in competition with the rest of the country to attract businesses and to keep businesses. And certainly they look at the quality of infrastructure as one of the factors that impacts their decisions.
Thanks, Rocky. The next question comes from Zephyr Hill. You've been promoted to a panelist. If you go ahead and unmute your line, you can ask your question.
Hey, how are you?
Great.
Zephyr Hill, I'm from Binghamton area, with a local news station here. I was just curious as to how you guys come up with the findings for the report. Is this sort of like a per capita thing? And more specifically here in the Binghamton area, is this pertaining to, like the city of Binghamton or the greater Binghamton region?
Thank you. The data sources are the U.S. Department of Transportation, although the information itself, like bridges, are inspected every 2 years by the state, the State Department of Transportation, and then the pavement data is submitted annually by the State Department of Transportation, and then the fatality data is gathered by law enforcement, but then it goes to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which has a pretty significant request or requirement to provide significant data. If you want, I'll just quickly give the Binghamton data so that you have that as well. The TRIP report finds that in the Binghamton area, the cost of driving on roads that are deteriorated, congested, and sometimes lacking adequate roadway safety features is $1,585 annually. In the Binghamton area, the report finds that 19% of pavements are in poor condition and 21% are in mediocre condition. The report also finds that in the Binghamton area, 5% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and another 56% are rated in fair condition. The report also finds that the average motorist in the Binghamton, the report also finds that in the Binghamton area, the average motorist is spending an additional 19 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion. The report also found that in the Binghamton area over the last 5 years, there's been an average of 20 traffic fatalities annually. And we know that when investments made in improved roadway safety features, that it has a significant impact on keeping the system safer.
Thank you.
Yeah, by all means.
Thanks. And I see we've got one more question. I believe this will be our final question unless others come in. That comes from Daniel Curran. Daniel, if you unmute your line, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hey guys, can everyone hear me?
Yep, go right ahead.
Excellent. I'm also from the Binghamton area, and I was just curious, what is the kind of standard that deems a road in poor condition, in mediocre condition, same with the bridge in poor condition or pure condition? And also, are there any specific roads or bridges in the Binghamton area that are, specifically in violation of these poor standards?
We don't have the data broken out down to individual segments of roadways or individual bridges. I would tend to think that your local public works agency would probably be the best source of some of their roadways or bridges they have significant concerns with. In terms of how the data is gathered, in terms of bridge conditions, it's essentially bridge engineers inspecting the different components of the bridge, on top, obviously the superstructure. They go underneath and look at the substructure. They really look at all of the components to evaluate levels of deterioration. If they thought the bridge was dangerous, they would literally close it or restrict it to lighter weight vehicles if they just felt that it could no longer carry normal traffic. So the bridges are inspected regularly. That's why, thankfully, we don't see bridge collapses. But obviously the long-term challenge is to improve them into good condition. In terms of pavements, every year, all roadways other than local suburban roads, the pavement quality is measured by running a monitor over those pavements, which measures vibrations. And as you would anticipate, when roads are in poor conditions, the vibrations increase significantly. If it's a pavement in good condition, the vibrations are much lower. So that's really and then that data is published in numerical categories, and we use those to determine roads in poor condition or in good condition.
Thanks, Rocky. I think we've got another question from Peter Gill, who would like to ask a quick follow-up. And one quick point of clarification, I think it was asked earlier, the data for all the urban areas includes the urban area itself as well as the surrounding areas. So it's not just the city proper, it's the city as well as the surrounding areas. So just a quick clarification and to go back and answer that. So Peter, if you want to unmute your line, you can go ahead and ask your follow-up question.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. I just wanted to ask, congestion pricing is top of mind for everybody in New York, and I know that the period of this report didn't cover congestion pricing, but was wondering, based on data that's been coming out so far, is congestion, the price of congestion for drivers? Do you have any thoughts about how congestion pricing is going to affect that in the coming year?
Certainly, this is the first time in the United States we've seen this type of significant congestion pricing. Obviously, I believe in London, England, it has been used. I think obviously we're all going to be watching the data very carefully to see its impact. I also think the reality, though, is what we've seen when tolling is used, and oftentimes tolling can be very helpful in paying for additional urban infrastructure, that people put great value on mobility. And so this will really, I think, help clarify to the extent that people value mobility. And so certainly I think we're all very interested to see how this impacts travel patterns in the New York metro area. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that. I don't know if Elizabeth, if that's an issue that AAA is looking at.
Well, it's definitely an issue, and an issue for tow trucks and other vehicles that are trying to enter that portion of New York City. So as you said, this is something that's really new, and obviously it's a hot topic in the news media right now. So interesting to see how things will play out. You know, we've seen some reports of saying that traffic has decreased in those areas because people don't want to pay the fee. So I think time will tell in the long run how things end up with that.
Just for the record too, NFIB is strongly opposed to congestion pricing. I know that not everyone shares that same sentiment, but for small business owners within that district, all their costs of goods and services are going to go up as a result of the congestion pricing fee. And those who have to travel in and out of that district for work are going to have to pay higher prices, especially in certain parts of the state that don't have adequate access to public transportation and need to use their vehicles. So it's a complicated issue. I know that not everyone shares the same position that NFIB does, but NFIB is strongly opposed to congestion pricing. There's better ways to fund infrastructure. The MTA has been known to have a lot of financial woes and mismanagement and other issues, and there's a better way to go about finding money for the MTA rather than tolling individuals.
Thank you. Carolyn, are there any additional questions?
I don't see any further questions, but Rocky and myself are also available for throughout the day. If there are follow-up questions, we're also happy to put you in touch with any of the panelists if you wanted to ask a follow-up question as well.
And I want to thank our panelists for taking time out of their busy days to participate in our news conference, and hope everyone else on the call has a good, safe day. Thank you.